Hey everybody, it's Ryder Timberlake with some code. We're picking up in this little mini series programming a text adventure game in Elixir. This is a game, Give Me Your Lunch Money. My buddy Dan Berlin made it back in 2009. It's a really fun little text adventure, very short to play. You can play through it in well under an hour if you know what to do. And in general, if you don't know what to do, assuming you don't get stuck, which it's a well-designed game, I don't recall in the current version there being much in the way of really tough sticky points. But you should probably still be able to blow through it in under 2 hours. My point just being, it's a small time investment, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. So anyway, we're moving it into Elixir, hopefully, so more people get the chance to play it. You don't have to go and download the Adrift interactive fiction kit in which it was made. And what we've been doing is, this is a project I'd been working on for a while, and then it sort of fell by the wayside. So it's been a number of months. I haven't done much work on it. That's where I was when I came into this web series, and now I'm going through it again. The commit history, the code base, familiarize myself again where I was in the project. And this is the third installation in this little mini series, and pretty soon we're going to start making some stories and or writing some code. I just want to have a clearer picture of where things are right now and where I want them to go before we move on to that. Yeah, I'd open it up for questions, but I'm sure no one's watching live, so and if you are, post the question and I'll be happy to look at it. So yeah, we've been going through this. We've been seeing, one thing I've noticed looking over these things is I'd like these commit messages to be just a smidge more informative. One thing process-wise I've taken to doing at work, because you try out new things and you get data based on that trial, and you try and figure out, okay, was this a good change or a bad change? And good changes you try to get consistent about, and bad changes you try to phase out. Which usually, if it's a new thing, is pretty easy to do because it was a new thing you were trying anyway. So one thing I've started doing at work is making really detailed commit messages to make it really easy for somebody coming into the code base to follow the thread, to follow the decisions involved, to follow the justification for the decisions involved. Even if I can put like potential roadblocks that one might face with the current implementation. And you might be thinking, well, who the heck has time to do that and also code and deliver whatever functionality is they need to deliver? And I would argue that a good and detailed commit history that makes it really crystal clear the kinds of assumptions that you're making and the kind of context you're building the thing for and the kind of problems you were facing that led you to hit on that solution. Having all those things really clearly laid out, of course, ideally not just in a commit history, but in the documentation as well, is going to save you a tremendous amount of time, and not just you time, right? When we're talking about future you, but also newcomers to the code base, other maintainers, having what is essentially, really it just comes down to documentation. Having that really, really visible and detailed and coherent is super, super, super useful. So yeah, I've been doing crazy detailed commits at at work, not like this YASM code here. Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't share my screen. I've been clicking on commits and thinking that they were part of the shared context that we were sharing, and as it turns out, I was just talking to myself. All right, so yeah, like these commits, right, come along. Player can move. Player can move is okay, I guess. But this is a small change. I'm not even really sure if this is worthy of its own commit, depending on your school of thought with atomic commits and such. But like, yeah, some code is not helpful. Because what did I actually do here? So right. I made it so that you would get an error returned, my error, if the enum was empty and you were trying to do a remove object on it. Whereas previously, we would have gone ahead and tried to call this list.delete and pass it an empty list and an object, which would have given us some kind of Elixir error. I'm actually now kind of curious what that error would have been. So we say list.delete, and we say the list, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let's try to delete 6. I realize this isn't exactly the context we were just looking at, but it should give the same error. Whoa, that doesn't throw an error at all. So what if we do an empty list and say, because this is different, right? The previous context, we were both deleting a thing that was not there. We were just deleting a thing that was not there. Here, we are trying to both delete from an empty list, which is one thing which we might expect to raise an error, and we're trying to delete a thing which is not there, which is another thing we might expect to raise an error. So let's see what that does. That returns an empty list. Interesting. All right, so it wouldn't have raised an error, but we are raising our own informative error as opposed to just returning the thing. Now, in what context, which I feel is good, but now I'm thinking, in what context in the game are we going to try to remove an object that's not there? And I would have to say probably none. And I think we would be doing a find object before this in order to get, what we're going to remove on. So I'm not really sure if we need this. I do understand why I put that in there, but I'm not really sure we need it. Everything is green again, hurrah. Yeah, and so then I started giving status codes to everything, which I think I've mentioned in a previous episode. Add that YAML for location data, right? We start having an idea of what locations are. Why are these curly braces here? I have a feeling I got rid of those. Oh. So I don't know how that would have parsed when I tried to bring it in. Intermediate transform. So let's just go back. Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. So let's just go back to where we were. Yeah, so here's me adding some front end stuff to interact with this Elixir application, essentially as a web API. Which, yeah, would be interesting to do. There's really no reason to do it because no actions of other players are in any way affecting a state that is shared by players. So nothing, if another player goes into a room and picks up an object, that object is not made unavailable to me. There's nothing like that in this game. So I have certainly thought about just bringing everything over into the front end. Just essentially when you go into the web thing, you just pull everything over from Elixir and you do everything on the client. Like all you really pull over from Elixir is the state of the world. And then you run everything in JavaScript. And, probably it makes more sense in this particular context for the sorts of things I am likely to want to do with the kind of thing that I just described to do that. But we're building this in Elixir because that was one of the goals for this project, was not just to make this thing available to other people, but also to learn about Elixir, and learn about TDD and do kind of all those things together. So at some point, I will probably end up writing a front end for this, which is going to interact with the Elixir backend and talk to it and say, hey, okay, the player's going north now, and then you'll reach out to the server and grab the next room and stuff like that. And from a performance standpoint, wow, that's just like kind of terrible when you think about what is actually necessary for this game. But it's Elixir. It's going to be blazing fast. I am never going to have more than 2 people at once playing this game. So it's a cost I'm willing to swallow. And what did I refactor here? This was from me and Sam working together, I think. Poop trap. Blah 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 blah. So one thing I really want to do soon is actually have a smoke test for the game. When I say that, let's be super clear about what I mean. I just mean like an integration-y kind of test, like really like user flow oriented integration test where, you know, I spin up a game instance and am giving it text commands and I'm going through and doing some things, and I get back the expected responses at each step in that flow. And one, I think that's just really important and useful to have, built, of course, on a foundation of lower level tests. But also, I don't really have much in the way of testing, or at least have not historically on this project had much in the way of testing of the actual user interface, the interface where I type north, pick up poop trap. I mean, you wouldn't pick that up, you make that. So, right, pick up a bucket of mud, right? Stuff like that. Well, you wouldn't do that either. You'd pick up the bucket and then, spoilers, not telling you how to make the bucket of mud. So, whatever it was I was saying. Helper methods are helpful, right. And so I made a decision here to go back to, because Credo was yelling at me for my inconsistency and whether I had a space or not between the curly braces, and I went back. That's not really an important thing to discuss at all. These are just kind of the little stylistic things as you work on a project and you sort of figure out what you want, and sometimes you just waste time switching back and forth between stylistic things that don't matter. Because you get distracted, or because, you know, you're kind of digging in your heels psychologically, not wanting to tackle the next thing that seems really boring or hard or whatever. You know, sometimes you'll just spend some time bite shedding and there's not even anyone else there who you're arguing with. It's just like you're trying to polish some little piece that doesn't really matter. This is just something that happens. And I think if you've got a good handle on your process, it's not something that happens to you often, but I do think it happens to most programmers, if not all, once in a while. Get exits. Yes, I agree. That's not exactly a pretty function, but it's at least clear what it's doing. I'm going to call the methods at some point. So sorry. Available exits. I don't like what I'm seeing, but it's not going to stay like this forever. And so this get exits. You pass at a location. And then you get back. So let me not talk about what you get back. Let me talk about what then happens. That location gets piped into map from struct, so we get a bare map back from the struct. I assume that's so we can call enum.filter on it, which we otherwise would not be able to call. That doesn't seem right. I question if this map from struct is necessary. In fact, I kind of want to go break that method right now. So sorry. Visual Studio Code, whoa, that is from another thing. Yeah, this is a 24 megabyte JSON file of the collected works of Shakespeare. Irrelevant. Yeah. What was I trying to go break? The get exits. So that's probably, if it's even still around in that sense. This is why I'm going through these things, because I don't remember where things are. And I've been doing these at the pace of, 1 or 2 30-minute episodes a week. And I'm thinking I may want to increase that pace so that I actually have some time to get some momentum with the context, because it is going very slowly. It's going within my anticipated pace for this. So I can be satisfied and happy with that, but cert raise function clause error. What the hell? It exists. Oh, right. This was one of the ones that Steve and I wrote. And so we'll get a function clause error, I think, if we don't get a match. Right, and we're not going to have a match because this add object takes in, I want to say it takes in a location. Really, you don't need to give it a location. There's no reason to give it that much data. All it needs is a list that can hold stuff. There's no reason for it to know about the whole location. Anyway, that's another discussion. Yeah, so this isn't going to match that signature, which again, I want to say takes in a location and then an object to be added. Ooh, look at that. What the heck? Why is that spec type so gnarly? Why is that spec type so gnarly? Hang on. I had a bad experience recently with Hangout. It's okay, so we're still going. We're in the editor. I am defined. Let's go look at that. Command click. Why did that spec type look so weird? Because that's not what it looks like. It looks normal. But yeah, it takes in, add object. You're taking in the object first and then the location? I don't like that. And I'm wondering, yeah, this shouldn't be in the location module. I'm just thinking out loud. This shouldn't be in the location module. It should be in its own like inventory. I'm just wondering, what is that common thing? A player has an inventory. It's like an object holder. So I'm trying to think, what do I want to call these things? Because the player's inventory Because add object here, I'm thinking add object should be the same whether you should be able to call add object and pass it an object in a player's inventory, right? You should be able to share that behavior. So I'm just wondering if we need a separate inventory module where the things that are manipulating the state of inventories, right, or whatever, these object holding things are shared. And I'm having an internal battle here. We're going to take like 5 minutes max, I promise, to debate this one little thing. But I'm having this internal dialogue. Avdi Grimm has a wonderful series called Ruby Tapas, which many of you are probably familiar with, and hopefully some of you already subscribe to. It's super, super awesome. And he just goes through all these different ways to build things more clearly and expressively in different contexts. And it's really pretty awesome. Robustly well organized, it's beautiful programmer brain food, and I love it. And I've been a subscriber for, I want to say, at least a year now, since before, I got grandfathered in at the old rate. You all older grandfathered in people know what I'm talking about. So it's awesome. I love it. But there's an episode in there which is like something about, it's 92, 93, maybe. It's about when it's this principle that Sandy Metz has talked about, that duplication is better than the wrong abstraction, right? And it's this sense that you shouldn't try to schlump two functions together if the shared concept isn't really a concept. So the example that was given, and I mentioned Julia Evans because he went through this twice. He did it in maybe 92 and 94. And the second time he revisited it, the concept was with Parents' Day, right? So there's a Mother's Day and a Father's Day, and it was a method for calculating Parents' Day was what they got schlumped into, was this abstraction of find Parents' Day. Now, Parents' Day is not actually a domain concept. That's not actually a thing. So for the understanding of people reading and looking at this thing, which really, that is why we write code. The way we write code is for humans. It didn't make sense to schlump them together that way. And I'm just wondering if they're object inventory. See, I keep coming back to inventory is the shared concept. And there is like a shelf. I'm 2 to 3 minutes into my promised 5 minutes, and I just need to ramble about this a little more. So you have a shelf, which is like an object holder. We're talking real world objects now, right? You have, and don't get uppity about the term objects, right? These are real world objects. There's a pillow. These are things, all right? So like a backpack holds objects. The ground, am I just objecting to kind of like the differences in context between the ground on which things are? First of all, ground, I don't like that either. I think it should be here. Like we have a key that's here rather than on ground, because it's not always on ground. I understand we're not exposing the name of that key to the player. I just want it to be a little bit clearer. And I think here, objects here, maybe we'll talk and think about this a little bit more. Coming into the last 1 or 2 minutes of this rant. All right. On the floor, we have objects. In a backpack, we have objects. These things, maybe the player has a backpack. So, but maybe the backpack, can you do special kinds of lists that are like structs, or does it even need to be special? It doesn't need to be special. All it does is hold objects. If you set the signature to just take in a list and give it a head and tail and have the head be an object, so it'll take in a list of which the first thing has to be an object, that'll avoid the absurdity of creating a struct that all it does is have a thing in it like inventory.objects. So, which seems gross. It's like in OO, when you want to do a deck of cards, please don't do deck.cards. Just make deck inherit from array. I mean, I don't know. That's my opinion. And then just call deck.cards, because what else is a deck? All right, I'm done. I'm done with my rant. I'm done with my rant. I just am going to leave a note for myself here. Maybe all this inventory stuff should live in its own separate module. Maybe all this inventory stuff should live in its own separate module. All right, done. What did I come over here to do? I came over here to look at that super nasty spec thing. For whatever reason, was not actually what was happening. Here we go. Here we go. I came over because I looked at the spec and I was like, what the heck? Oh. Well, that's actually kind of cool. You may have figured this out way before I did, but what VS Code is actually doing here is it's adding insight into the structure of those structs here when it shows us the spec type in this little cool dockup pop-up feature. So as we just saw, this location.addObject takes in the gmylm.world.object. It takes in the gmylm.world.location. And so all it's done is it's gone and expanded those things to show us a little bit more about the structure of those, the shape of the data, those two structs, the keys that it will contain, or may contain. Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. That's really, really good. And it's got nothing to do with me that it looks that nasty in practice. Very cool. Very cool. And if I have an objection to it, I mean, I'm the one making my game pass away around all this data. Most workhorse functions in this game, they take in everything. And I don't think that's going to be necessary a lot of the time, actually. I mean, it's fine. We can let everything take in everything for the time being. And honestly, I would rather probably do that for a while than waste my time saying, oh, where can we? Because this is in flux. This is an early stage project. I don't want to waste time trying to do what is often my dysfunctional instinct and get all the duckies exactly perfectly row aligned, you know, when at any moment I could have some epiphany or some new requirement. Probably is not going to come in with this little pet project of mine, but you know, I could figure out something and just be sideswiped by some sudden new thing and realize, well, I just wasted all this time making the angles on those ducks perfect and precise, and now I gotta rework the whole thing. So I'm gonna try and avoid doing that. All right, south attribute that I don't know if I want those tests. What value do those tests give me? These. They are testing the shape of the data. These are tests in the same vein of those tests I was looking at last week or the week before, like the doc test for event, for example, is a good example. So when I say that I expect event.initialize events piped to enum.count is going to kick back 2, that is a very explicit, clear assumption about the number of events that are in the game. As soon as I add an event, it is going to break that test. That's the same kind of test that we were just looking at a moment ago Not in location. No, we're not. That's not the test. You need to be in the actual test. Event test. See, I didn't write those kinds of tests for event. So minimally consistently, I should either nuke those other tests or here we go, location test. Yeah, so just testing that those things I have said to initialize, like, so a new struct here, right? When I have this new struct, the south key is nil. Of this new location struct, the on ground key is going to be an empty list. Yeah, I just don't know how, I mean, break if you change the structure of the thing, but like if you change the structure of the thing, you should know you're changing the structure of the thing, and you should have sufficient coverage with other things that you're going to know. I don't like those tests. I do not like those tests. They seem pointless. It returns there is nothing there. Error if the location's on ground is empty. We're talking about getting rid of this, the functionality this tests earlier in the episode. Returns an error if it's not there. Remove object. There's no dart gun there. So if we look up at dart gun, we would expect it to have a name. I think of dart gun is how that logic works. Yep, object name dart gun. It's gonna say there's no dart gun here. Okay. Let's I'm not sure how long we've been at this. I didn't get a clear look at the clock. All right, let's maybe get through all the commits. Probably not, but maybe. As I said, within the next couple of episodes, we'll start writing some stories or some code. Now I forget why I did this comma greater. Oh yes, I think that's how in YAML land you make it possible to have it be sensitive to the carriage returns and do carriage returns this way. I can't remember if I had to like add an extra line because of how it's being parsed. Returning formatted exits in player.look. Right, so I have the logic for formatting the exits living inside the look method. Yeah, it's temporary. It's all in flux. Get exits, map from struct, and we're going to reject anything that's nil. That's good, right? Because under the previous logic, it would have been kicking back also north nil, blah, 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 nil, which not only clutters up the player's view, but also exposes elements of the wizard behind the curtain logic to the user, which is always a bad game-breaking experience. Tweaking formatting exits. So just changed that a little bit right there. Xdoc. Oh yeah, Xdoc is this super cool thing for generating documentation in Elixir. It's really, really cool. I like it a lot. It'll just go through your files and read where you've put in docs, and it'll put them into a really clean looking HTML documentation, which is pretty awesome. Corrected the doc test miscall. Oh, right, because I'm in the GMYLM interface tests module, and I am doc testing GMYLM, which is not the right thing. Move the data YAML files into their own directory. That seems good. Again, there's that colon north colon thing we use to have our YAML Elixir thing know to bring them in as atoms, provided we also pass that atoms true argument in there. Here's an event data YAML file. Here is an event module and test file. Right. And we had one event at that time. Adding an events key to gmylm.world. Right. Yeah, so there was some discussion of gin servering this thing. So I found out at the Indie Elixir meetup, at the presentation I gave there on this text adventure game, which I was really grateful for the chance to do because it gave me a shot at getting some great feedback from some brilliant minds, including some experienced Erlang or Elixir programmers. Was that I had essentially built a gen server here, and not here precisely, but in the game loop, and this was kind of like my handle calls, I guess. So we can dig into that a little bit more at some point. But yeah, in case somebody is really wanting to see what that is right now, saying you didn't build a gen server, well, very possible. Interface. Yeah. Is this really the current? Oh, no. Oh, I am halfway in between moving implementations over. This was not a good state for me to leave the code in. Hang on. Please tell me I at least didn't commit. Oh, gross. I did commit. I committed. Please tell me I at least tagged it WIP. I'm sure I didn't. Well, I at least left sort of a note to start changing the interface controls 3 implementation over to return a list of module function and args instead of a function. So that's what we're looking at right now. This was the previous implementation, and as I said, things are in a. I've left things in a not a great state to leave them in. I think I was probably pressed for time or something. And at least again left myself a note that I was halfway in between implementations. But this is the new implementation, which is going to kick back a tuple, a atom corresponding to the function. So it's like a tuple that has at the top level the module. I think I can just pass it. Yeah, so I alias gmylm player up here on 5. So I should just be able to pass it player here. And then I pass it the function, and then I pass it a list of arguments. And that's going to be the new implementation, which is really beautiful and clean, and something I'm very grateful to Steve Grossi for, because like before it was this function thing, and I was like, how the hell do I test this? And actually how I had started to test it was just to actually pass east in and verify that the player moved. And so it was an integration test rather than a unit test. And, I was already testing that the player was moving when you passed in the right argument elsewhere. So ideally, I would just test that the interface maps to that function rather than testing that it actually does what that function does. And so this provided me a really clean and beautiful. I'm so tickled by it. I'm so tickled that this exists in Erlang, and Elixir. I just love it. Yeah. So this will be the new. Oh, I'm not sure what this is. Yeah. No, I get what that is. Am I going to write this invalid command method and then pass it nothing? Do I even need? Is there a kernel dot apply slash 2. That's where all of this is getting piped, by the way, is this kernel dot apply slash 3, which takes in a module, a function, and a list of arguments. What I'm wondering with this one, the invalid command, is if I was just putting that there thinking that I was going to write it. I suspect that's the case. And then with this list, I'm just wondering if there's a kernel.apply slash 2, which will take in a module and a function, and that's it. Like, I guess I'm wondering, one, if it's necessary to pass this empty list. I mean, I think you get what I'm trying to say. Oh, here's invalid command. Oh, you're kidding me, right? Oh my gosh. All right. So yeah. Cool. If Credo hasn't yelled at me for this yet, it probably should. Output. Yeah, these, I remember Steve being a little iffy about these, and I'm a little bit iffy about them also. Render output. All right. The last thing I want to do before I tie things up for today, last thing I want to do is, sure, I'll run the tests once for good measure, even though, as far as I know, in the last state, they all passed. And then the other thing I want to do, I think just IX is my alias for that. Yeah, to run my IEX-s.mix, which will kick me right into the thing. I tend to angle towards making things accessible to everybody. So if I say things that you already know very well, sometimes that's sort of where I'm coming from with that. So ls should tell me does not exist, is being expanded. Oh, well, that's cool. Huh. In Elixir implementation of ls. What happens if I do? Ooh, ls-a does not like that. All right. I could understand why. Maybe. Anyway. Oh, because it's trying to do ls minus a? No, that seems silly. Ls minus 5. So this suggests to me that it works back from the argument, that first it evaluates the argument and then it evaluates the result of that argument passed to the function. That's cool. I mean, maybe that's something that everybody who has a CS background knows, and that's how most languages work, but I don't have a CS background. I didn't know that. So this is some evidence that, yeah, we maybe evaluate the argument first and then evaluate the return value of the argument passed to the function. And if that's the case, that's super cool. And if it's not the case, I want the counterexample so I can understand better how it actually works. What did I come here to do? I ran the test suite. Oh yeah, gmylm.startgame. I want to remember where this is crashing. Right. Really? You don't recognize East? You don't recognize East? Oh, I'm very suspicious of this. East is right there. Now we are, again, partway between implementations, but no, East should return a function. So where's my logic for, because this is what I wanted to do, was get a feel for, um yeah, because I could go east or west there, so that should be valid. Oh, you're telling me, of course. Process command and game loop. Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, so this logic is gonna need to change because you are invoking, you're expecting a function to come back so you can invoke it, and that's not how that's gonna work anymore. In this game loop, process command, right? My brain's not working. Render output, is that where the problem is coming from? No. So process command. Uh-huh. So where do you capture that input again? Oh, from game loop. All right. All right. Input equals IO gets. Right. Process command. It's going to come in as a string. Oh. Oh, that was silly. Why did I do that? Just asking for trouble. So I suspect if I add, and I'm only going to test this one, I might try west also, because you can also go west and see what error I get then. But I suspect this is the problem. I didn't like the way all these things looked with dash in, dash in, dash in, dash in, dash in, dash in, but I hadn't figured out how to get past it yet. I'm not sure why I removed those if it wasn't ready to get removed. So we'll recompile, um, and we'll do geom.start game, and we'll go east again. Okay, good, 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 good. Hmm. So those are both still returning functions though. So why aren't you matching? What? What is that error? No case clause matching function. Process command. All right, well, we at least got it to recognize it and kick back the function. Case clause matching function. All right, this is all I wanted to do, is I wanted to get back in here and verify that yes, indeed, the code is still broken. Wait, what? Can we do just one more time? Huh, I built the functionality at one point to make it pause between each of these things and wait for user input and do dot dot dots and stuff. And this, I swear I had built this before. The getting these separated. I'm gonna keep them separated. All right, y'all. It's been a lovely and productive day. So happy to have been able to spend some time with you. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch you next time. Oh, sorry, summary. Today, we continued to dig into my Elixir port of Give Me Your Lunch Money. Continuing to wade through the commit history and just get an overall feel for where things are. We did notice a couple of places where maybe we want to improve a couple of things or sort of change the organization. One of those places was in the tests, right? If we go to our location test, we'll see a prime example of some tests which I don't have questionable value in my mind, um, that are really just looking at the shape of the data of default location structs, and really, aside from like when we start the game, attribute the defaults to nil. No, not aside from when we start the game. The only time we ever use bare location structs like this, location structs which only hold their default value. Wait. Yeah. No, the only time we're ever going to do that is in tests like these. So if for all intents and purposes, we are never initializing a bare location struct, I see no value in these tests. And they are trivially costly to run, but they do take up a lot of space here. And they take away from space I could be using to otherwise keep things sort of clean and organized in this file. So I will likely get rid of all these tests. I just don't want to do that during the summary portion of the video. That's something I want to do during the beef of the video. So I'll probably do that next time. Get rid of these garbage tests. I did think about doing it today, just at that time. But I didn't. I'm in an investigation phase right now, and I don't want to make too many changes when I'm in the investigation phase. But maybe I should have just been a little bit more relaxed and chill and like, hey, dude, what's the big deal? These tests aren't worth anything, you know? And just let it go. Gotten rid of them. Meh. I'm trying. It's a work in progress, right? The whole loosey goosey. All right. And then one of the other things that we looked at, remind me, it was, we discovered a big issue, which is that for whatever reason, in my wisdom, I paused halfway between two implementations. And I don't mean I paused halfway between implementations in the good way, which is I have both the implementations living in the code base side by side until it's safe to blow away the older one. And I feel very confident in blowing away the older one. I mean, literally, I nuked half of the old implementation, replaced it with a new implementation, and that's where things are. So that was really a disastrous decision. I mean, disastrous in principle, right? Because in practice, it's not really going to cost me that much, probably. But that was a really silly idea. If I can just find that interface. There we go. Yeah, so I'm halfway between these two implementations, one that's kicking back this tuple of module, function, and argument list, and one that's kicking back a function. So yeah, that was bad. And then one of the other things we looked at was if we go over to location. Whoa, okay, good. Like this remove object stuff, for example, and in general, not just location, but oh, weird. Okay, so yeah, like this add object and remove object. In fact, now I'm questioning if we even need those at all, and if we can't just have some notional idea of inventory and just manipulate them as bare lists and just not even write functions for them and just lean on Elixir's list stuff. Though probably it's not going to give us the edge case handling that we want. Not sure. I'll need to come back and think about it. But certainly we saw there is motivation for moving this stuff out of the location module and into like some sort of inventory handling module. And the more that I think about this, the more this seems like a really pernicious and bad pattern, the way I've organized things. Because adding an object doesn't have to do, well, it doesn't have to do with the location. I don't know. There's a rant here. There's like a nascent rant hiding, dwelling in the jungle, in the bushes, in my heart, waiting to spring out. And I'm really wanting to just let it out, but I can't find it. It's just rustling bushes. It's very frustrating. So yeah, location module, we could change that. And that wraps up this week. Thanks for joining me. See you next time. Tschüss, tschüss, tschüss.